It's one of the warmest, funniest, and most heartfelt family films ever made. But behind the sweet disguise of Mrs. Doubtfire lies a series of shocking, emotional, and surprisingly hidden truths that most fans never discovered. Robin Williams pushed himself to extremes. The child actors were fooled in ways no one expected, and several scenes nearly changed the entire movie forever. And once you learn these behind-the-scenes secrets, you'll never watch this classic the same way again. So let's uncover the 10 little-known facts that shaped Mrs. Doubtfire, one surprising reveal at a time. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of our upcoming deep dives. Part 1. The darkness of the original novel. Madame Doubtfire. Not many viewers know that the story of a father disguised as an elderly housekeeper began with the novel Madame Doubtfire by Anne Fine, which is much darker and more bitter than the film version. In the book, Daniel is an unemployed actor, posing nude for art classes, seen by his wife as a terrible role model for the children. And the tension between them is described almost like a long, cold war. When it was adapted for the screen, the filmmakers softened many of the sharp edges. But the scars in Daniel's inner world are still visible in his eyes, his tone of voice, and each impulsive decision. He isn't just a childish father. He's a man who has heard "you're irresponsible" so many times that he now believes he can only redeem himself by trying to control everything to an extreme degree. The fact that Daniel chooses to disguise himself instead of negotiating openly with his wife and the court is a direct callback to the spirit of the novel. Every time he's pushed to the margins, he doesn't engage in dialogue. He builds another layer of armor. The name Doubtfire may sound like a playful second-hand store joke, but for him, it is a chance to escape years of feeling belittled. Part 2. Deleted scenes that show a darker Daniel. Around 30 minutes of footage was removed from the theatrical cut, including a subplot with the neighbor Gloria Cheney and a harsh argument at Lydia's spelling bee. These scenes reveal a Daniel who easily loses his temper and struggles to control his words when cornered, much closer to the novel's version than the warm, softened figure most audiences know. In some of the deleted sequences, when he feels attacked, Daniel uses his cleverness to humiliate or undermine others. For example, tricking the neighbor into watering her plants with dog urine as petty revenge. In those moments, his pattern becomes unmistakable. Instead of facing problems directly, he reacts with small, spiteful tricks and then slips back into guilt. These scenes make his inner life more complex. He's not just a victim, he's also an active contributor to the breakdown of trust around him. Cutting them made the film lighter, but that psychological current still flows underneath, surfacing in how he overreacts whenever he is doubted or loses control. Part 3. The NC-17, Rumor and the Reality of an R-rated Cut. Years later, social media spread the rumor that there existed an NC-17 cut of Mrs. Doubtfire because Robin Williams's ad-libs were too explicit. Director Chris Columbus clarified that no NC-17 version was ever made, but admitted there was enough outtake material for an R-rated version, since Robin often pushed the humor into very adult territory. Seen from Daniel's perspective, this lines up perfectly with his repeating pattern. He goes too far in every party, every joke, every attempt to express himself. At his child's birthday, on the recording stage, or in scenes while disguised, he constantly tests where the limit is, and usually only realizes he crossed it when everyone else takes a step back. If those darker, more suggestive lines had stayed in, the on-screen Daniel might have been far edgier and more controversial. The decision to keep the film at PG-13 feels like the crew holding him back on his behalf, while his core remains the same. A man always hovering on the edge, one impulse away from going over. Part 4. 2 million feet of film. For a man who doesn't know when to stop. To keep up with Robin Williams' speed and improvisation, Columbus had to shoot with multiple cameras simultaneously, almost like a documentary, just to catch the spontaneous reactions of the other actors. It's estimated that about 2 million feet of film were used, and the director ended up with nearly 1,000 cans of outtakes for this movie alone. That filming method unintentionally reflects Daniel's inner world. He's a man who doesn't know when to stop, speaking faster than he thinks, reacting before considering the consequences. The people around him, his wife, kids, friends, the lawyer, are like unwilling cameras, constantly forced to capture and respond to his surprises. Needing several angles to contain his energy is a technical callback to his psychological pattern. Daniel can't be neatly framed in a single shot. He keeps spilling over the edges, in life and on set, forcing everyone else to pivot and adapt around him. Part 5. 4 hours of makeup and the feeling of being trapped inside himself. The Mrs. Doubtfire makeup took about 4 hours each time, with prosthetics for the face, neck, and hands, plus a thick costume that made moving, eating, and breathing difficult. Robin Williams has said that there were days when he had to stay in the makeup for many hours straight, until he felt like he really was another person locked inside a strange body. From Daniel's point of view, that experience is very close to being a father pushed to the outskirts of his own family. He can only exist in his children's lives through the role that the law and his ex-wife allow. Every fake wrinkle and layer of prosthetic glue becomes a kind of mental armor he applies to himself, partly to hide, partly to endure. At one point, Robin wandered around San Francisco in full Doubtfire costume, visiting places where no one knew who he really was. That's a quietly unsettling callback. Daniel isn't just performing for his wife and children anymore. He's letting the role seep into his private world. When a person hides in an invented identity for too long, the line between who I am and who I'm playing fades without warning. Part 6. The dripping frosting and Daniel's cracked smile. In the scene where Mrs. Doubtfire buries her face in a cake to cover the missing mask, the frosting accidentally drips into Mrs. Selner's teacup because the set was so hot and the topping began to melt. Robin improvised the line about giving her a little sugar, and the team decided to keep the detail. On the surface, it's a funny visual gag. On a deeper level, it's a perfect metaphor for Daniel. He repeatedly puts himself in suffocating situations, then tries to patch his panic with humor so no one notices the mess underneath. The sweat, the melting frosting, the shaking voice. They all merge into the portrait of a desperate man still trying to make others laugh. The unscripted drop of frosting into the tea is another subtle callback. Every time life heats up around Daniel, his instinct is not to talk it through, but to add one more joke, one more improvised bit, one more silly move to shift attention away. The other person's smile is saved, but his own cracks never quite close. Part 7. San Francisco as the psychological stage of a failed father. San Francisco does more than provide pretty backdrops. It acts like a psychological stage for Daniel's journey. The house at 2640 Steiner Street has become a pilgrimage site for fans, while the cramped apartment above the Danilo Bakery on Green Street is where he lives after the divorce. From a distance, the city's hills, bridges, and neatly painted houses form a maze where anyone can disappear into the crowd with countless roles. Daniel, a voice actor by trade, moves through these spaces as if walking through scenes of a long play. At home, he's the irresponsible father. In court, he's a man defending himself. At the studio, he's an under-recognized performer. In Miranda's house, he's the perfect elderly housekeeper. The fact that these are all real locations makes his performance even riskier. This isn't a safe stage. Every mistake, from the ruined dinner to the chaos at the restaurant, has real consequences. And over again, he keeps acting on these very streets in front of unknowing audiences who witness his next impulsive move. Part 8. Ratings, Controversies, and Emotional Cuts. When the film was released in the US, it was rated PG-13, but in the UK, it initially received a 12 certificate, meaning children under 12 couldn't watch it due to some mildly suggestive lines. Theatre owners and parents pushed back, and the film eventually had a few seconds trimmed and the rating lowered to PG. This shows that, even though it's marketed as a family movie, the story touches sensitive areas of marriage, sexuality, separation, and gender roles. For Daniel, it's not just wearing women's clothes for laughs, but confronting a painful question. What does fatherhood mean when he no longer shares a home with his children? The recurring callback here is how he keeps dodging these questions with extreme actions. A chaotic party, a reckless disguise, sabotaging Stu's meal with hot spices out of jealousy. Even when the film is trimmed for rating, the emotional scars of the main character remain fully intact. Part 9. Box office success doesn't erase the image of a flawed father. With more than $441 million worldwide, ranking second at the 1993 box office behind Jurassic Park, the film became a massive hit, winning an Oscar for makeup and a Golden Globe for Best Musical or Comedy, as well as Best Actor for Robin Williams. Yet, at the center of that commercial triumph is the portrait of a failed father, a man who loses custody of his children precisely because of a repeating pattern: impulsive behavior, broken promises, and disrespect for boundaries. Audiences laugh at the voices, wigs, and glasses, but they also ache with him in the courtroom scene when he pleads to stay in his children's lives. This empathy stems from the fact that Daniel doesn't wash away his sins with one apology. He has to work, learn to clean, cook, organize his days, and slowly change his behavior. The most important callback in his character arc is that every time he's about to repeat an old mistake, the film lets us see him pause a little longer. His growth isn't linear, but it is real. Part 10. A divorce story far more progressive than its era. Many later commentaries consider Mrs. Doubtfire a surprisingly progressive divorce film for the 1990s. The main couple does not get back together, even though the male lead has clearly improved. From Daniel's perspective, this is not a classic, happy ending. It's a hard reality. He doesn't win back the marriage, only a healthier version of fatherhood. In the final scenes, when Miranda and Daniel reach a co-parenting agreement, he doesn't rely on any gag or over-the-top stunt. His voice is less exaggerated, his eyes no longer desperately trying to perform happiness. It's a callback in reverse to everything he has done before. This time, Daniel doesn't hide behind makeup, doesn't break the rules, doesn't test how far he can bend the system. Few viewers notice that the message Mrs. Doubtfire gives the little girl on TV, that families come in many forms but love can still remain, is actually Daniel speaking to himself. After a long series of negative patterns, he finally realizes that what needs to change isn't his appearance or his ability to outsmart the system, but his willingness to take responsibility for the people he loves.